All right, good evening and welcome to this episode of Paranormal Lens with Jotnick's Paranormal. My name is Jamie Widener. I'll be your host tonight with my co-host Chad Thomas and David Deromedi from our team. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good to see
Good
you.
evening.
The episode tonight is a little bit different than what you've seen with us before because we're going to actually try. I am going to try to tackle a paranormal kind of a hotspot title or option in Orbs. And I think we've all seen them, and usually it's still photography, sometimes in video. It's a spot or an object that is in the lens view, and it stands out. It's brighter, and an orb, of course, is a round object, but it can be something that's moving and maybe have a tail on a video. And the discussion is going to be, what is it? So I guess I'm going to start with a definition. Orb, the definition from Merriam-Webster in an orb is a noun, and it's a spherical body. Similar words are sphere, globe, ball, circle, ring, spheroid, and round. And another common term used with orb is anomaly, something we can't quite define. So that definition, again, as a noun, is something different, abnormal, peculiar, or not easily classified. Something as a deviation from the common rule. And that seems to be certainly what orbs are in what we see. So I'm gonna ask Chad to pull up some images that we'd like to share. And guys, I'd like to take a look at these. Tell me what you think, what you see here, obviously, and what you think of what you're seeing in the image as we're looking at them. So here's a nighttime shot, which again is the most common thing we find with orbs. They're usually done at night and usually with a flash photography setup. So there is brightness coming away from the camera toward whatever the image is trying to capture. In this case, I'm not sure what their target of this picture is. Maybe just to capture the area they're in. It looks like it's maybe a colonial site with the fence back there. But this orb or anomaly is square in the center of the frame. The thoughts on this, guys? What do you see?
Well, I see the one that you're talking about in the center of the frame, but also if you sort of track up to the right of that, towards the corner, there's a second one.
Yep.
Much smaller and not quite as bright.
I will also say that to the opposite corner to the left and down mid-frame-ish, there's another smaller one as well. And I thought that was rather interesting too, because we're drawn to the big one, the most obvious thing. However, there may be more to it, and this is what good evidence review will do, right? Not just the obvious, but look around the whole frame of the shot to see what else might be present.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, without being there and seeing what exactly was going on. I don't think you're reflecting off of something if they're all in a line like that. So, sometimes people attribute it to a bug or dust or something like that. But the fact that there's three in a row, I'm wondering if it's leaning towards like a lens flare of some sort.
Okay, and another option, right? So normally these are not things that we see with the naked eye, and that's why it's on the video or the photography. At the end when we're coming back and reviewing, these are like pop-ins and like, oh wow, when did that happen? Just like an EVP. We didn't hear it necessarily in the room while we're in the session, and that's why it's sort of off-putting sometimes too. Like, wow, we were right there, and we didn't hear this. So but this is a classic example of what an orb is in the general sense of it. It's a white ball visible in photography after the fact. Going away from that area and going back and looking at it later. So what do you let's move on to the next one. We'll have some more context to look at some other ideas here. But here's another outside shot, definitely at night. The camera definitely has a flash moving on it, to project that camera image. A centered item as well, center frame. Not as bright, certainly as the last one, but again, classic example, round object, whiter than the environment around it, and loose out of context in the shot.
Well, that's precisely what that is. I mean, it's It's the anomaly. It sticks out because it's completely out of context. You would expect a a very dark shot here, but you guys know, and I have a hard time with orbs. I have a hard time because it's a lot of times very dependent upon your camera and very dependent upon external factors. I spent a lot of time in the Tucson, Arizona area and out in Tombstone, Arizona, and places like the Birdcage Theater and Big Nose Kate's. They end up with a lot of orbs and stuff and such in it, and I just have such a hard time because you're using flash photography and you don't know what you're catching, because for all you know that could be your first example I like better than this one, because this is just a single orb. This could actually be, gander in the air, because we only have one picture, and B, if it was three pictures, like we recommend, 3 pictures in rapid succession, and you have this in the second picture and the first and third picture, it's not there. I'm a little bit more inclined to, want to look a little bit deeper into it. Something like this, you could be tracking just a piece of debris in the air that wasn't visible to you at that moment.
Right.
Absolutely.
In this picture above that one, it looks like far in the distance is the moon between the 2 trees. I don't know if you can see that, Jamie.
Yeah, I can. Yep.
So I'm wondering the way it is, I'm wondering if you're picking up a second silhouette of that moon or something.
Sure. Well, here's the challenge, right? Because we want to, as paranormal investigators, and this we say this a lot amongst us as a group, but there's a difference between a paranormal investigator and a ghost hunter, right? Mm-hmm. And no disrespect to anyone who considers himself a ghost hunter, but usually it's the person looking for the thrill of the experience, and believing everything they see, and I think as an investigator, we have to be much more objective and try to find the things that are potentially what else it could be, try to debunk it, and therefore, this, I don't get excited by this. I like, wow, that's interesting, but I'm not like, that's definitely an orb, and that's definitely a spirit loose in the, this open space. And, look at this great capture, to your point, Chad, I definitely see the moon in the background, or whatever that light source is. It may be a street light in the distance. I can't tell. But with that, I start to look at what else it could be before I start to say definitely a paranormal thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes this a really kind of a hot topic, because there are 2 parties involved. There's 2 sides to the field, and no one's wrong. I'm never going to tell somebody that's not a spirit, because I don't know. But in it, my mind takes me to what else it would be first.
Right. And I'm also interested in the 2 little red dots at the bottom of the screen.
True too.
So you
want to move on to the next one. So an indoor space, obviously an older property. It's interesting because it's in a doorway. There's no depth beyond the door frame because of the darkness that goes past it. But it really does have kind of a feel that there's something in the door. Which again makes it really compelling that it could be something paranormal. And I think one of the interesting things is we get to go to places that are a lot of times, at least lately, that have been populated for a while. They're not abandoned properties or empty spaces where you put up a flashlight and you can see the dust through the lens of the light. The beam of the light. I can't tell you what the context is on this space, how often it's been used, but that could be the fact that it's just a dusty spot, and we've kicked up stuff by being present in it, and it's caused something to catch in the light reflecting of the lens on the flash. But it's interesting, and again, same thing, takes you to the point where what could it be? Okay. So much more here. I apologize for the poor quality of this one. It's not as crisp as we've seen with the other ones, but a lot of things are captured here. And because there's a field of opportunity, and again, all orbish items, this to me is more like there's probably moisture in the air. An outdoor site again. And it could just be that there's mist, and each bit of mist is reflective because it's water and moisture, and the light's going to catch on the flash. But an interesting one to look at, and it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. Yeah, we were teasing a little earlier about this one, but this almost looks like it has a face in it, right?
Yeah.
Bigger, rounder. Could be a smiley face in there.
No,
Another outside space, and a cemetery nonetheless. So certainly puts the element of potential paranormal involved because of just being that proximity to that many dead people. But it's too perfectly round. That's really interesting about it.
It's also not white. It's more yellow.
Yep.
So, I mean, a lot of times if it's bright white, I almost want to automatically debunk it as it's flash. But this being a little bit of an off color of more of a yellow, it intrigues me a little more.
Yeah, this one's a bit more compelling than it could be.
Now, am I getting ahead of the game when I ask about, is this a case potentially of that phenomena that you mentioned when we were getting ready?
A little bit ahead of it, yeah.
Okay.
I'll get to it.
I'll wait.
Yep. And that's going to be the case for all of this. So I'll provide a scientific rationale for this in a minute or two, once we get through the images. But yeah, there's a probable logical explanation for everything we've seen so far. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's move on. A theater. Yeah, we're about to hit the Clifton Theater. So this was interesting to me because there's an opportunity here with an inside space. What I can't tell here is whether that's actually a light, though. So that's maybe a drag, from the opportunity, but it doesn't appear to be one based on what else I see on that wall, as far as the vents and the ducts and so forth, and some of the plumbing. It looks like it's up there on the right. A light would be out of place there. So it's interesting, and we talked a little bit on our Clifton lead up episode, whether or not theaters have extra energy because of the activity in theaters. It's a space and a place where there's a lot of passion, between acting and musical productions, whether it be orchestra or bands, and all of the cast and crew that takes to run a show, a live show, and or the audience that attends these events. These are usually people who are endeared to the arts, and they keep coming back to these spaces because they like the experience of being on a presentation. Mm-hmm. So there could be a whole lot of reasons why there would be an orb here. But again, it could be something else completely.
Right.
That was interesting because very few of these that I've seen so far, or at least I've showed you, are indoors.
Right. I agree that it's not a light, because the other thing you would have with a light is the chairs, the seats that are over by that area are illuminated. So they would be illuminated if it was a light, if it was generating its own light. So yeah, I definitely don't think it's something that's a fixture there. I think it's something else.
Okay. All right, next slide.
Okay.
I just so you all know, I keep looking off to the side because I keep taking the pictures and putting them on my big screen so I can actually see them versus on my phone.
Sure. Again, another inside space, lots of objects that are, free floating objects in the room. The person certainly doesn't seem infected or infected. Hopefully not infected by this, but impacted by what's being presented in the shot, which leads me to believe that they're not aware, there's anything happening around them. Normally somebody would react, if something were loose in the space like this, especially with as much as this. So again, rather interesting, and various degrees of brightness, and a little bit of difference in sizing between them. So curious, for sure. Okay, let's get the next one. So this is one, Dave, you may recognize this space.
Yep.
This is the basement of the Conjuring house. And this one to me is interesting. If you look in the bottom center of the frame, there is a
I see
spot
it.
just below the chair, away from the chair. And this space is really interesting to me because we spend a lot of time in this room, with as a session, but also along that far wall, right underneath the window, is a well, and that is the original well for the home. And in our last episode, we talked a bit about water and the proximity of water to the manifestation of spirits using the energy of water. So I found it interesting that we captured this, and it's not on the floor. I promise you that. It's not a spot there at all. It's just a loose element. Oh, and there's my dog. All right. Okay.
Special appearance by?
Special appearance by Paris, the Wonder Dog. So interesting spot. We didn't have a lot in this space. We didn't have a lot of engagement in the session we were holding, other than just the feel of the room, and it felt a little unique down there.
Okay,
but it was interesting going back and looking at it.
My question on this picture, and I know the answer because I know what you used, but was this taken with an iPhone?
Yep, absolutely was.
Because one thing that I want to throw out there is in a lot of our investigations at boobies, people will come up to me and say, look at this orb that I caught. And with an iPhone, it's almost always a green orb that's sort of opposite the light source. And that's sort of what you've got here. It's got a green shade to it.
And I don't know, the ceiling lamp. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's some sort of filter on the iPhone lens, but almost always when it's a picture from an iPhone, I see a green tint or hue to it.
This is it's green-esque at least. Yes, I agree.
So just
that's a curious thing too, and that's knowing knowing equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing having a familiarity with the outcome of the use of the equipment, and it's really easy to pull a phone out of the pocket, right, and be right there,
right?
Snapping shots with it. I know you, Chad, you carry a full camera, so that's you have to be ready. You have to pull that up. You have to have the cap off. You have to have it powered up. Be ready to go. With a phone, it's pretty quick. And
Mm-hmm.
and we all see homemade videos and such of incidents as are happening in the world. We rely on these things more and more and more. I can't tell you the last time I carried a camera to an investigation. I do rely on my phone a lot. So that's a good catch.
Thanks.
All right, let's go to the next one. I think we're going to come into some video here in a moment.
I was going to say that's all the pictures that we have.
Okay.
So do you want to move into video?
Let's move into the videos. A couple, 3 or 4 videos, I believe. The last one I think is one of the most interesting things I've seen in a long time. But these are really short ones.
Okay. Hold on. Mm-hmm. I may have the wrong one up here.
That's the Conjuring house. Now, the well room in the Conjuring house, that's while Chad's getting that. When we were there, we had we did a couple of sessions down there, right? We did
one as a group.
We used that one piece of equipment. Was the one where you only get the pieces of the words.
Yes. And I'm going to lean out to Tim and Erica Bergen on that one because that is a piece of equipment I haven't seen since, before and or since, that they have a probably exclusive, but it was catching short words and phrases, and in that, like a pop of words versus, where we're sitting down with a spirit box where it's just scanning through, or an obelisk. So it was quite an interesting tool to use, but it almost made you feel like you had ADD. It was going so fast, and pops were coming out of it.
Right, and you're trying to make words out of it.
Yeah, it's a different way of doing it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was a piece of equipment I had never used before.
Yep. Yeah. All right, and my dog. Sorry, guys.
Barking at the door.
Right. So the video here, obviously something's coming up through, popping and going off to the right. Here we go again. This is an indoor space. Obviously, it's a place that looks like it's well maintained. So I'm assuming this is not dust, but I'm assuming though that it is something that's flying around. It has a trajectory, a path. It kind of comes around in a circle and it looks like it just passes off to the bottom right, back into the center of the room, out of the lens, the full angle of the lens. But it really is compelling because it could be something that's an intelligent spirit as well.
Okay.
And what do you think there, Dave?
Again, I don't. Orbs are one of those things where I don't have a great deal of expertise. My opinion on them is just automatically to go with I mentioned it last time, like Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is probably, is it as likely that you missed an orb floating in front of you or a larger dust particle floating by as you were taking as you were filming or floating, or the vent, like for example in this one, could the vent have turned on and then be dust blowing out of the vent?
Yep. Here's a very similar thing coming down from that. We're actually kind of appearing and encircling and going up to the top. But it looks like it's dropping first as we first capture it, and then up and out. Here, though, in this pause, it has some translucency through it. So I'm seeing that light that's hanging down through it as it paused there. So it makes it curious, but again, it doesn't have to be a very large object. The
other thing I'm looking at is there's some, if you watch the door handle in the back, sort of in the center of the screen, the intensity on that changes. So I'm not sure what's causing that. So it's just something else that comes in.
Yeah. There. And we have no contact. I'm assuming we're looking from a wall, with a security camera. Mm-hmm. So I doubt there's anything behind the camera angle. But should there be something there like a window, something passing by or a light source? We get this at the brewery all the time because we're at the street level, with the Eloise bar, and even upstairs in the ballroom. We do get the issue of traffic, on the street with car lights and such. Especially as it gets later, we tend to not think about it as much because there's the place starts to clear out. The establishment starts to empty out a little bit more, so there's less and less traffic. But as we're intent in a session, a car can come by and we're not hearing or seeing it right away, and it may already pass by. Plus, folks kind of fly on that street a little bit too. So as we know from being outside, so it's really interesting that it could be natural light doing that. So here's an investigation actually happening, and these folks are all intently doing a session, and lots of stuff is happening around them. I'll lean in on Dave's perspective to this. This really feels like dust to me, but again, no one's reacting first and foremost. But they're not seeing the camera angle; they're seeing it from the ground level, and everything appears to be above them. But if an vent or a duct has kicked on somewhere, it could easily be pushing particles into the space. And a lot of times the ductwork are in the ceiling, or at least higher on a wall to air an area out. So it really could just be that simple.
And this one's an odd one too, because you've got it. It's obviously a video of a TV monitor. So there's some other weird things.
The carryover, yeah.
It's interesting though. Then I think we're moving into the Belgrove now.
Yeah. So this is a video, two videos coming up, at least one that's coming from the Belgrove plantation. a colonial era home, an old plantation property. It is, to my knowledge, a museum. So it's still an active property. So again, one of the spaces that's populated regularly. A lot of people pass through it during the day at least. Set up security cameras at night because you never know, who may be coming around. But a curious capture here as well.
Sorry, I'm sitting here watching it on my other screen, and
yeah, at least I'm not the only one that's doing this.
So this one's weird, right? It's like a little tornado.
This one's my favorite so far because it doesn't make sense for dust because I don't know the space, but being an old plantation, I don't know that it's going to have air conditioning, like forced air conditioning.
Yeah, I agree.
So the fact that it's rising like that and circular, that's not a normal path for a bug to fly in. So it's definitely interesting.
And I think it's interesting too that you get some context with the stuff that's around it. You can see the items on the shelf. You get a feel for it, the size that it could be. Now, obviously, we're not in the room, but it's unique, very unique catch. And the fan's not running, so it's not drawing or pushing air. It looks like it's a fairly static room. Yeah, my lean on this is bug. Again, I'm going to say that just to say it, but the potential that it could be something interesting otherwise is always there.
All right, we'll add it to the stream this time.
We've been here before. Okay. So again, this one loops up and around and goes away in the middle of the room. And I think where we lose it is in that light reflection off the floor from the window. If it weren't there, we'd probably be able to track it a little bit further.
Okay.
But it's interesting because it has a full arc on it.
Yeah. So did I miss one, Jamie? I mean,
there should be one last one from the brewery.
Right.
And then I'll talk about what this could be. All of this could be. So this is us at an investigation at Booby's Brewery. This is in the Eloise bar. With the items on the floor is a tripwire, and it's a set of REM pods that are strung together, each independent of each other. I'm panning from the bar corner, and I'm going to start panning off to the right into the preacher's room, which is immediately to my right, and I'm going to come back and just kind of keep an eye on the room, see what you see.
All right, I'm going to go just to the video and let it run because it's about 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay, so two objects traveling, and moving, and a little bit different. Now, obviously, to your point, Chad, with the Conjuring House basement shot, this could be that challenge that an iPhone creates, because the one certainly has a greenish appearance to it. But coming back into the room from the preacher's room back into the bar, that flare out is what caught my eyes most intriguing to this one because it's certainly unique. Didn't see any of this in the room, of course, in the time. And also, the pods are going off, especially the one at the end of the line in the preacher's room, there was nothing in there as far as opportunity to challenge that pod to go off. There's no electrical area in that room or not, anything like that, at least at that end of the room. So it was curious. So, okay. Thoughts on any of that?
I mean, it sort of tracked with your movement a little bit, but like you said, there was that one point that it didn't. So it's a little odd. There was also, it almost looks like there was a smudge on your lens at the one point because there was a little bit of an extra arc on the one the one orb. I don't know if you know what I mean, but it sort of looked like it was, I guess, a smudge is the best way to look at it.
Sure.
So
that's where we are with opportunity for the things to show tonight. Now let's talk about what it could be, right? So the most common reason or rationale behind this is a feature called backscatter, not to be confused with backsplatter, because I'm sure that's something totally different. Right, Dave?
Don't Google that on a work computer.
But backscatter is a phenomenon, and I'm going to read some of this, so bear with me, make sure I say it right. But backscatter, or near camera reflection, commonly occurs in low light scenes when the camera's flash is used. Cases include nighttime and underwater photography are the most common places for it. But when the bright light source and a reflective unfocused particles are near the camera. So the one thing that we couldn't see in any of the still photography and realistically too in the video is how close the orb or anomaly is to the actual camera. There's not enough depth perception. And a very small object very close to a camera can appear to be huge, and especially when there's light reflected off of it with what the flash would provide. So light appears much brighter very near the source due to the inverse square law, which says light intensity is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the source. Okay, so the closer it is, the brighter and bigger it's going to be. So there we are. And what else adds to that? Fujifilm, so a film company and a camera manufacturer describes this as such. There is always a certain amount of dust floating around in the air. You may have noticed this at the movies when you look up the light coming from the movie projector and notice the bright sparks floating around in the beam. In the same way, there are always dust particles floating around nearby when you take pictures with your camera. When you use the flash, the light from the flash reflects off the dust particles and is sometimes captured in your shot. Of course, dust particles very close to the camera are blurred since they are not in focus, but because they reflect the light more strongly than the more distant main subject of the shot, that reflected light can sometimes be captured by the camera and recorded on the resulting image as round white spots. So these dots are blurred instead of dust particles, or blurred images, instead of dust particles. So it's dust, right? It's water. It's an insect. In the case of the iPhone phenomenon, it's a lens flare. Those are kind of the things.
Mm-hmm.
However, so that's the scientific rationale. The paranormal rationale is that some ghost hunters have claimed that orb-shaped objects are visual artifacts appearing to be spirits of the dead. It's a manifestation in front of us that we're not quite there to see in the moment. And this is very much the ghost idea. A lot of times we believe there are spirits in the spaces. If we're catching EVPs or having items, trigger objects, being used, what's the cause of that? That should mean that there is something in the space that we can't see. So perhaps this is that capture of what that spirit is. And, it's not going to be the sheet with the holes cut out in the front of it, or, some Hollywood image. Perhaps this is what the manifestation of a spirit is in the afterlife, at least as far as what we can do with it, from what our minds can comprehend.
So, I think we've all seen the shows where, they capture an orb that moves into somebody and then they start feeling weird, or moves towards somebody and they start feeling different or weird. Or mm-hmm. So, I think there are times that maybe there is something. But again, it's so hard to prove any of it. You can disprove a lot, but it's what you can't prove that we classify as paranormal. So,
yep. I had an opportunity to read this book, which probably isn't going to capture very well on my screen, but it's called The Believing Brain by an author named Michael Shermer. And he's written a lot of books. This one's probably about 10 years old. But it's the subtitle of it is From Ghosts and Gods to Politics and Conspiracies: How We Construct Beliefs and Reinforce Them as Truths. Okay. And the premise of this book is we do what the author calls agenticity. which means that we have a tendency to take and infuse patterns with meaning, intention, and agency before we understand them. Do any research on them, we have a chance to absorb it. So we see that image and we associate it to a spirit because it's an orb. And in the paranormal context, that's automatically what it is. If we were removed from the paranormal field and we were taking pictures for work, it was a photo shoot and we had these things, we would be working to remove them immediately because we want to edit the photo to be as crisp and clear of the subject that we were intending to take the picture of. So in context, we're looking at a paranormal opportunity because that's what we're doing. We're trying to find something that is paranormal. And that to me is really interesting because that's a mindset. We're trained to look for things, and that's the investigator side of this with all of us that we may not have ever thought of before if we don't step into this world.
Well, no, there's a term for that as well. That's called confirmation bias, where you're looking for a result that confirms your hypothesis versus maybe taking the simpler, more likely answer. I ran into that a lot with people who would research theories and then discount the obvious, the contrary, for lack of a better term, for the stuff that would be the negative of what you're looking for, and that's just as important. But when you mentioned the looking up at the movie theater lights and seeing the dust in it, it kind of puts that in a little bit more context of what you may be looking at.
Right. And I'll go a little further on that. Thank you. And go a little further to that. I remember watching an early episode of the original Ghost Hunters. And I think it was Grant and Jason in a space, and they were trying to figure out something that they were seeing. And they explained the concept of, they called matrixing. And where we see something and our mind can't quite process what it is, so we automatically associate it to something that we understand. And, the orb is that spirit to me, pun intended again. But it's that concept where we're not sure what we're seeing. So we're trying to make it be that thing that we think it is, that we've been told that it could be. And it goes to the concept that the author is describing with agenticity as well to me, because I'm trying to make sense of something and not really understand what it is. And I can't go back to the spot and get that exact opportunity to present itself again, because whatever it is gone. And again, if it's dust, hopefully that someone's, busted out the pledge that I see up on Dave's shelf there, and sprayed down the room, or, it's the moisture that might've been in the space. You're going to get it, aren't you?
It's there for a reason, in case an orb comes floating through.
Yeah. You protect yourself.
I think the matrixing thing comes in a lot because I see pictures that people are like, oh, look here. And it's like this distant blurry thing in the back of the picture. And it's like, don't you see the soldier because I'm at a Civil War battlefield. Don't you see the soldier that's there? Yeah. And it's like, again, I think a lot of that is your mind trying to make sense of a blur, and it wants to put a shape and something that it understands to it. And sure. So I think that happens a lot.
And it goes to we're there for a reason. So we're trying to find things that fit the reason, and we're there to investigate and to find things. And we want to find things, and we say this all the time, but 99% of this is walking around the dark talking to ourselves. We're not for sure until we go back to review things, whether we've captured something. That 1% in the moment is fantastic. When devices are tripping, or there's been some audio reply of some kind, a knock, or even occasionally you hear a voice. You see something, move. It's really cool when it happens, but it is so rare that we want it to happen. And that pursuit sometimes leads to false positives, and that's the challenge, I think, in all of this, to be honest and true to what really is happening in the moment, and not associate it to something that's really not. It's hard, because we want it to be there. And I think I'm not speaking for you guys. I want it to be there. I want to find something. So it drags me back, in the middle of the night, all these places we go to. and all the time that we spend and the equipment that we buy, we want to find things, and we try to get our best foot forward to do so. But, sometimes it's a stretch. And I'd rather throw out evidence that I'm unsure of than to boldly say that it's something that I'm not confident that it is. That's just how I feel about it. So I will take everything I've seen so far and say, yeah, maybe, but nothing's conclusive to me.
I think everything that you presented tonight, I think that could almost, all of it could be written off as not paranormal.
Yeah.
So, Dave, what's that?
I was asking if I was still there.
Yep, you're here.
Speaking of anomalies.
I was lost in a thought. I'm sorry.
Just wrapping up everything. Like I just said, that everything I think Jamie presented tonight, 95% of it could be written off as not paranormal.
Well, 95% of the stuff we see can be written off of as not paranormal. Mm-hmm. It's that 5%, and that's probably a big push, like an exaggeration of the number. But it's that 5% that we can't explain that keeps us coming back. So I think the stuff that, like, the information presented was fantastic, and just like everything else, it's open to the interpretation of the person looking at it. For me, I'm a little bit harsher on it. I look for every way to potentially, explain it. Versus, and Jamie and I have had conversations with people who are like, we started asking questions about it, and their response is, "It's an orb. It's just an orb. It's an orb. It's an orb."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the subject matter expert was, in fact, what they set out to be, and I learned, plenty about orbs this evening.
Cool. All right.
Without having to get my pledge down.
All right, guys. Well, that's what I got. Thank you. And how about we move on and wrap up the episode?
All right. So, as we typically introduce about this point, we've got some upcoming things for Jotnik's Paranormal. The 22nd, we have a public investigation at Booby's Brewery. The 29th, some of the team will be going to the Burlington Jail Museum in New Jersey. Then we have another investigation at Booby's on the 6th of May. And then Jotnik's and Dover Paranormal will be doing a private investigation May 13th. Tickets for any of these events are available on Booby's website. You can go to our Facebook page to get a link there. And check out Booby's, their social media. They have a new social media manager, and they're doing some fun things to try to get people involved, get some following. So check that out. As for our upcoming topics, we're going to be wrapping up the Clifton Theater investigation in about a week. So Jamie and I will be presenting stuff to David, and we're hoping to get some people from the Clifton involved in that one as well. And then David is going to start some of the paranormal places and do the Shanley Hotel. So we're looking forward to that. Another subsegment of Jotnik's is a limited series called Ghostly Truths. I know the first episode has been filmed, and they're doing post-production on that right now. So hopefully we'll see that soon. And as always, here's our social media stuff. You can follow us on any of these social media platforms. I know there's things all over the place to find us, so just keep looking for us. So
give us a like, give us a follow. Stay in the loop.
Yeah. So I think that's about it.
Yep, looking forward to next time, hearing about the Clifton and starting my research on the Shanley.
Absolutely. Yep. Looking forward to that too. That's a really cool spot.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. So maybe we'll have to get a team going up there. So
road trip.
All right.
All right. So we're back next week on Tuesday, and looking forward to seeing you all then. Thank you so much for watching. And until then, stay spooky, my friends.
All right. Thank you.